All right, and welcome into the next edition of the Vegas Squares podcast. We have what I would say is a jam-packed show today. It's going to be a long one. Strap in. I got my boys with me. I got Anthony and I got Spike. What's up, gentlemen?
Not much. How's it going?
Hey. I'm not awake enough to think of a good introduction, so just use that.
That one was pretty good. Give it 6.5 out of 10.
All right, fair enough.
So it's been a lot going on. How was your holidays, guys? I know you kicked it into 702 and you decided to fly the coop.
Yeah, wife and I went back to Boston. She's actually from Boston originally as well, but we met out here in Vegas. We decided to see family and all that, and then we were able to spend one night away. We got a nice off-season rate at a beach resort in Maine, so we had a nice view of the ocean, the whole thing. So, yeah, it was busy and not relaxing, but it was a nice little break to get away and see family again.
Right on, right on.
Nice.
How about you? What'd you do in your time in Las Vegas?
I just chilled back and relaxed.
Yeah, we grilled out some steaks. Tell you what, man, Costco, very underrated for choice steaks. Yeah. I don't know if maybe I'm just behind to the game, but Costco, check them out. They got some good cuts of meat. I love meat in my mouth. Anyways, we can cut that up.
What podcast did I sign up
yeah.
for?
Well,
wait until we start
comes with the territory, man. I pay you guys well. Deal with it. It's bowl season, and we're getting into the bowls that make them, matter, I guess is the thing. We're gonna talk about a lot of bowl later in the show. Maybe smoke a bowl, talk about bowls. We'll see what happens. Where do we stand on our bet, Anthony? I'm looking. It was 3-2 last I saw. Iowa covered, so that gives me 4-2. Virginia laid a fucking egg. I can tell you that.
Yes.
Virginia Tech? No, that was you.
Yes.
So 4-4 right now. What about TCU?
TCU, that was.
I know Michigan State won, so that gives me that. I think TCU. Yeah. Anyways, we're looking.
I think we're 5-5.
I think we are 5-5. So we've done nothing to separate ourselves at this point. So the big games are going to matter. But let's take a look back at these bowls. I mean, any interesting bowl jump out at you guys? I know that they're the who gives a damn bowls, but there were some couple interesting ones.
Yeah, there's been a few interesting ones. The most interesting one on the slate to me so far was probably the Iowa-Boston College game. Matchup of two well-rounded teams going at it. It was a pretty interesting game. So,
yeah, I don't know if you guys watched it, but when Wyoming and Central Michigan took the field in that famous Idaho Potato Bowl on the blue, I mean, you had Wyoming in their brown and yellow, you had Central Michigan in their maroon and gold, and you had a blue and orange. Oh, it was the worst fucking TV I've ever seen in my life. It was it looked like fucking Smurf throw up. It was terrible. Like it was just, it hurt to watch. But I had money on the game, so I was like, fuck, I'm not turning this motherfucker.
That's when you leave the game on and you turn the color down to 0.
It was, it was rough to watch, but that one was interesting to me. I think Josh Allen, performed well. He's one of the guys I'm really high on for next year in the draft. Virginia came out and laid a nice egg after a opening kickoff return touchdown, and then they said, yeah, we're good. We packed it in and went home. Holy cow, they got beat, 52-7?
49-7.
49-7.
Navy just ran all over them.
Yeah, that's an understatement of the year. I mean, their quarterback had 5 rushing touchdowns.
Yeah.
So it's amazing.
Yeah, that was a tie of a bowl record of any bowl.
And I know Spike loves college football, I think. So this is
It's not that I dislike college football. I'll give you a very quick rundown as to how I got into college football. I decided one day that there were, about 150,000 at each one of these games. So I'm like, all right, I'm going to decide to watch college football. So I turned on ESPN Classic, and it was showing the 2000 SEC championship between LSU and Auburn. I said, all right, whoever wins this game is going to be my team, and that was LSU. And that was 2003 when they had the split national title with USC.
Okay.
So that's about as, in-depth as I got with college football. I'll occasionally watch things, if there's something interesting. I sort of paid attention a little bit to the Virginia Tech Oklahoma State game, the whatever bowl that was, I don't even remember. Because I have a buddy of mine that's a big Virginia Tech fan, and I know that Mason Rudolph from Oklahoma State is supposed to be like the, one of the high.
He started out that way. You're right, absolutely.
Yeah. And I watched this game. It's my first time watching Mason Rudolph. And he was accurate, but I thought he threw a horrible ball. He was underthrowing receivers. They always had to adjust their routes. He was throwing ducks in the air. It wasn't a tight spiral. And I don't get what the hype is about this guy. Maybe
that's why all the hype was preseason until he stepped on the damn field.
Right. So, I looked at that and I was just like, but I mean, that sort of thing is interesting to me. But I went to a Division III school with no football team, so I don't have a rooting interest in.
He's more of a ladies field hockey kind of guy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So, let's talk about a quarterback. You talked about Mason Rudolph. He's probably done nothing to help himself go in the draft. But Josh Rosen out of UCLA is definitely an interesting character because he's made some interesting comments this week. Basically, but saying by not saying, I ain't going to the Browns. That's basically what I got out of it.
That's pretty much the gist to me as well. In my mind, do you think he maybe stays at UCLA next year due to the fact?
Well, we talked about that because on one of the podcasts, I believe we talked about when Chip Kelly got hired at UCLA. And my thought was, there's two schools of thought here for Josh Rosen. You're going to be the number one pick, so the only thing you can do by going back to school is hurt yourself. However, if you're talking about, I don't want to be drafted by the Browns, so I'm going to go back to school and play under Chip Kelly.
You might get
Who the fuck do you think's going to be there with the 2019 first pick of the draft? It's probably going to be the Cleveland Browns. So, I mean, you're really gambling on getting hurt for a chance to not go. Do you think he has enough clout? I mean, he's not the man. He doesn't come from the Manning pedigree. So, I mean, we all know what happened in 2004. Behind closed doors, Archie basically told San Diego, we're not coming.
Yeah.
And luckily, Phillip Rivers was there. San Diego had enough interest in Phillip Rivers to make the swap. I can't imagine that's going to be happening again. So the Browns realistically they're obviously going to have the first pick. They've locked that up. They're on the clock right now.
They might have the third.
But they may have anywhere from the third to fifth pick too. So Rosen, I mean, I don't think you can dodge these guys. What are your thoughts on Josh Rosen? It's the way that he's kind of, the way he's kind of called his character into question.
I think he's also doing his responses for more publicity and all that. I mean, I wouldn't want to go to the Browns either myself, but I mean,
see, I disagree. And I'll ask you, Spike. I disagree. I mean, tell me, you got the Browns one, you got the Giants two, a franchise who's has a legacy to it, and you have Cleveland who doesn't have a legacy past 1959.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, it's the LeBron theory.
Well,
there's no pressure.
Right, and especially in this scenario that you gave, because there's no pressure in Cleveland. There's a ton of pressure in New York.
Exactly.
And those people are relentless, especially if you don't start out gangbusters. Like, if Rosen goes to the Giants, gets the starting job, and doesn't go,
according to
10-6,
yeah,
he's going to get booed off the field.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is the Brown. I mean, he takes them to the playoffs within 2-3 years. He's a god.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, in Cleveland, look at LeBron. LeBron, is a different scenario. He's probably one of the greatest basketball players of all time, but he brought Cleveland a title.
Yeah.
That guy could murder babies for the rest of his life and probably still be okay in that city. He'd still be okay in that city. I mean, I don't know. If I'm Josh Rosen, if you're as good as you say you are, this is a chance to showcase yourself.
Right.
Yeah.
But the flip side of that is, if he's saying he doesn't want to go to Cleveland, at what point do the Browns give up on him and say, well, if he doesn't want to play here, we're not going to bother with him?
I don't think he's the best quarterback in the draft anyways. So to me, I mean, I'm not sitting there in the war room, but I think Sam Darnold or Baker Mayfield is the best quarterback to come out of this draft. So to me, I mean, the question I have is if the Browns don't take him, did Josh Rosen really get what he wants, or did Cleveland never really consider him to begin with?
In my mind, I don't think they considered him to begin with. Like, in my mind...
Well, they're going to consider everybody, but I mean, that's not the right way to look at it. Did Cleveland ever really consider him over Darnold and Mayfield?
I highly doubt that.
Yeah, so, I mean, they got, I think, their first round pick and their first pick and their anywhere from 3 to 5, one of those will be a quarterback. Baker Mayfield might be high in one of those spots. I think they should trade one of those picks. Stockpile, but,
if
we'll see what Dorsey does.
That'd be smart. Trade down, potentially the first pick and pick up a second round and a fifth round or something.
All right, well, let's look at it. I mean, if you had to make a snap decision right now, Josh Rosen stays or goes?
I think he goes to the draft.
I think he goes as well. He's not going to do well under a new coach, new coordinator, new system, the whole thing. It's not going to help him out at all. I don't see any reason for him to stay in school.
Yeah, in my mind, it's going to hurt him more than help him.
Fair enough. Let's stay in Big Blue. Eli Apple's now been suspended for the game. He's had a rough couple of weeks. First, his antics off the field. Landon Collins calls him a cancer. And then, he's been now accused of slowing down the new iPhone X. So Apple's had a rough week. Apple has had a rough week, I can tell you that. Well, let's talk about the Eli version, though. The Eli Apple. Locker room chemistry among teams is one of the strongest bonds, in any major sport. You see the camaraderie in hockey, the playoff beards, et cetera. Just look at the Vegas Golden Knights and how quickly they've bonded to each other.
Oh, yeah.
When you use that word cancer and you call one of your teammates it's irreparable, right? To me, it is. In my mind, that's a very strong word to use, and it's usually more towards the negative side of things.
Yeah, I mean, it's amazing to me that it's whether or not he's a locker room cancer. Fine, we can debate that all. The fact that it's one of his teammates saying it, it's not a media member. It's not like, a locker room staffer or something that's overhearing things. It's a teammate calling him that. That is unreal to me.
Yeah, that's the crazy thing is Landon Collins is one of the leaders on that defense. It's been a rough year. It's easy to kind of, pack it in and say things, that maybe you don't mean. But Landon backed off, a little bit later after probably some discussions with management. But I believe he meant it. I don't know if that's a reprobable. And one of those guys got to go at this point.
Oh yeah, and I did see a rumor. Obviously, this is on Reddit, so take it with a grain of salt. But there was somebody saying that the Giants staff is done with Eli Apple. He's not in Giant Blue next year.
Yeah, that's a quick turnaround considering he was their pride and joy just last year. So more NFL here. Garrett's going to return to Dallas in 2018.
Why?
I thought about it because that's he's the Marvin Lewis. He's the new Marvin Lewis at this point, in my opinion.
Okay.
I feel like something always happens every year to give him an out. It was Tony Romo got hurt, then Dez got hurt. Now we've got we've got Zeke's suspension and Tyron Smith's injury. He just seems to get that out every time. I don't know if he's necessarily a bad coach. I don't know. He's a hell of a conundrum. Why, I guess, is a good way to ask. He might get Earl Thomas, maybe?
Maybe, but is that going to be enough?
What's going to happen next year to give him the out? It seems like every single year it's like he gets that excuse.
Yeah, but
somebody's going to get hurt or something, or
at some point,
Zeke's going to beat on another chick.
A buddy of mine used this metaphor back with another team. I forget which one, but he said, you know what you're going to get with 4 quarters. Eventually, you have to trade it in for a dollar bill.
Right.
And you know what you're going to get with Jason Garrett. How is that good enough in this league? You can't just continue to kind of be middling, maybe win a division, maybe win a playoff game, but not really get to the Super Bowl. This is Cowboys. This is supposed to be America's team.
Mm-hmm.
This is supposed to be Jerry Jones and his ego. How are you not in the Super Bowl every year? How are you not making that kind of a push? And they're just not doing it, and Jerry Jones seems to be fine with it. I can't believe it.
Do you ever think the reason he's fine with it is because it creates the better show when Dallas is hated? Making the Super Bowl every year is the Patriots thing. We hate, well, not we, you and I don't.
Right.
Well,
the fans hate the Patriots because they're so good. We hate the Yankees because they're so good every year. But we hate Dallas because they're a media shit show. They're like the Kardashians of the NFL. And Jerry can get more publicity by doing that. I don't know. Call me crazy. Feel free to debunk my theory. But I think Jerry gets more money, Jerry gets more time, Jerry gets more play when it's a circus. Look at this. We've got a rundown here of 7 things and 8 things, and 3 of them are Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah.
And that's consistent with a lot of the stuff we talk about.
Yes.
You know, we have the Earl Thomas situation. Now, that's not necessarily a Dallas thing, but Dallas is involved.
Yes.
You know, Earl says, come get me. Didn't really think anybody was watching. I mean, come on. We're really behind that. Whatever. Now we've got Dez, who's not taking a pay cut despite his performance being probably, you know, a pay cut being necessary at this point.
Yeah.
I think Jerry fuels on it, and I think that's what drives the income. And Jerry's all about making money. I mean, let's call it what it is. Kraft's about winning championships. I think Jerry's about the image and the design of the NFL, and it's soap opera. I mean, the NFL has become more of a storyline. You know, every week we got something to talk about. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure Jerry would love to win another Super Bowl, but I mean, he hasn't done it in 20 years. At this point, shift gears.
Mm-hmm. Well, you and I both know NFL is first a business, then it's
it's business, it's entertainment, and then it's sports.
Yes.
So, is Dez going to be back next year? That's a bigger question. $12.5 million. He's going to count against the cap. They can get rid of him and only have a $7 million hit, so they can save $5 million. I mean, I can't imagine them not doing that. I can't imagine Dez Bryant in a Cowboy uniform next year unless he somehow changes his tune.
I don't see him changing his tune, though. I think he's going to stick to his guns, and the Cowboys are just going to release him.
Yeah, I could see that as well, and there are plenty of other teams that are out there that are going to pay him the money. Even with the decline in performance this year, somebody will give him the money that he wants. If not the exact amount, then close to it.
Yeah.
You think he's going to get $12.5 million from somebody else?
Maybe 11, but he's certainly not going to be, you know, he's not going to take the whatever Dallas is going to offer him, which will probably be in the neighborhood of like 7 or 8.
Yeah, I was guessing about 8.5, yeah.
Interesting. I think he's gonna find the open market, not to his liking, in my opinion. So, but we'll see. I mean, he could get that kind of money. I don't think he's the receiver. He's not a $12 million receiver at this point anymore, but we'll see. So,
no, but who else is that's going to be out there?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, we'd have to look at some of the free agents.
And that's I can't think of anybody else that's had a better run of it that would demand, you know, the same or more money than Dez Bryant.
Fair enough. I get the crack research staff on that, see what they provide. Let's discuss James Harrison, because this has been the big story of the week. And depending on what side of the fence you sit on this, he's either a traitor, a mole, a rat, a lazy piece of shit, a sideshow. My initial thoughts, and I'll let you guys run with this. My initial thoughts: I hated the signing by New England. I hated it. The guy is a diehard Steeler for life. He was, you know, he's an undrafted free agent. Pittsburgh gave him a chance. Everything he's done has been for Pittsburgh. And then I feel like he's infiltrating enemy territory for the ability to become a mole. Tell me I'm crazy.
I think you're a little bit nuts. I think it's mostly Belichick admires really good defensive players, especially given his time in New York Giants with Lawrence Taylor. He still talks about LT to this day at press conferences because of how much he admired him. So when a player like that, not necessarily of LT's caliber, but when a player like a James Harrison that has had that kind of stellar career, that even if he doesn't have the physical ability, he still has the knowledge, he still has the ability to coach some of the younger players on the Patriots and kind of give them that boost. I think Belichick's going to jump all over that every day.
Yeah, and as the week wore on, that was kind of my thought. I think that if he's not what I thought he was initially, you know, as far as an infiltrator or a spy for Pittsburgh, I agree with you. We got the correct research staff, a couple of guys you were looking that I think could get $12 million. Jarvis Landry from the Dolphins.
That's exactly who I was thinking.
Devontae Adams from the Packers. Sammy Watkins from the Rams. Those are the three that the correct research.
Allen Robinson would be another.
Yeah, he's not getting 12. Not after that injury. Not after coming off that injury.
No, I would say closer to about 8 to 10.
Right, and I think Dez can get 6 to 7 realistically, but you know, James Harrison can still offer a lot of things off the field, even if he doesn't play too much on the field for the Patriots. I'd love to see him have an impact in the AFC Championship game if these two teams collide. That would be, to me, just the kind of the ultimate. Because now you look at this is where the plot kind of gets weird. Because if he is a mole, if my theory proves to be correct, I think all of this Pittsburgh just piling on, snoring in meetings, asked to be released multiple times. I feel like they're using that. They're just feeling that. Oh yeah. The Pittsburgh. He's not giving information to Pittsburgh. He's not doing anything for Pittsburgh. Look at him. They're shitting all over him in the media. But it's a game, baby. It's. I don't know. It's still too early to make an assessment. I hope that it's just basically he's a consummate professional, and he's going in there trying to win a title.
It's going to be interesting to see, especially if they have a rematch in the AFC Championship.
I, with the exception of Jacksonville having the game of their life, I don't see how these worlds don't collide.
Oh, absolutely. And one of the media members brought that up to Belichick. They said, did you only sign this guy to get information on Pittsburgh? And Belichick's response was the perfect Belichick response.
We play the Jets this week.
We play the Jets this week. So.
The man does it every time. Wow, it's crazy. But let's look at another interesting situation, and if it is even one at all. But Sam Bradford has returned to practice. Is this anything?
Well, half jokingly, I don't even know what team Sam Bradford plays for anymore. It's like, who cares?
Yeah.
Well, in case you're wondering, he plays for the Minnesota Vikings, and it seems like everyone is waiting for Case Keenum, the experiment, to fail. And so far, obviously, it hasn't. They're, 13-3? Or, excuse me,
12-3.
12-3?
Yeah.
12-3.
So probably going to be 13-3 when they play
the Bears.
Next week. So.
Yeah.
You don't think Trubisky is going to be able to beat that Minnesota defense?
I think they'll cover the spread, but...
Bitch Trubisky.
Yeah.
I'll tell you what, who might cover the spread is Jimmy Garoppolo. That man's look like...
Well, that
man's looking like he was worth about 40 second-round picks.
That line flipped 7 points.
But I know.
That's how...
That's how much crazy he is. Vegas is just... Yeah. I think Vegas underestimated it. And are we assessing Jimmy too early at this point? I mean, you look on one hand, he's 7 games into his career, if I'm not mistaken. 6 games into his career. He is 6-0.
Yeah.
He played 2 in New England. I think he's played 4 in San Francisco. He's 6-0. But at the same time, he's played 6 games in his career.
Yes.
So I'm more impressed by his ability to master this Shanahan offense that apparently it took a lot of quarterbacks a long time to master, and he's done it in, what did he get traded, like week 10-ish, or right before the deadline?
Yeah, right around then, yeah.
So he's maybe had
3 weeks before he started.
Yeah, so I mean, you're talking in a 6-7 week period. He's maybe not mastered, but he's learned the offense. I mean, they had an NFL Films, whatever it's called on NFL Network now. It's not NFL Films, but they broke down his 2-minute drive at the end of that game against the Titans.
Oh yeah.
I mean, guy sounded like Tom Brady, acted like Tom Brady. I mean,
very straight.
It's just amazing what he's able to do. And I don't want to say it's way too early, but he looks like a stud.
I would have to agree. I think he's definitely a future of, if not the 49ers, some other team.
Oh, they're locking him up. There's no way Lynch lets that go.
Oh yeah. No, and I did see a report yesterday that said that if they can't work out a contract, they'll franchise him for at least 1 year, just so they can
like
hang on to him. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They got to do what they got to do to keep him at that point, because he's created a future. I mean, that's what it is.
I'll be the odd man out and say that we're too early to tell. I don't know that he's necessarily going to be the superstar that everybody believes, and it's just one of those things where, eventually the defenses will figure him out, and if they will figure him out, will he be able to adjust his game to that next level so that he again becomes an enigma and starts winning game, and starts playing well and kind of continuing on. And if he can't, then he's just another Ryan Mallett, Matt Castle type. And if he can, then, more power to him, and he's the superstar that everybody thought. And it was just, it would be like another Aaron Rodgers sitting behind Brett Favre, or Steve Young sitting behind Joe Montana. And, the question is, did the Patriots gamble the right way? I'll tell you this, after spending a week in New England and listening to the sports radio out there, nobody in New England is happy about this trade. At least none of the fans.
Yeah, I mean, and you and I subscribe to the theory, in Bill we trust, but this one is for a second round pick. I mean, you listen to guys like Colin Cowherd, and they're basically saying that, they're trying to make this into the Kraft versus Belichick. Belichick was ready to move on from Brady, and Kraft told him, we're not ready to move on from Brady. And obviously Brady's performance told him we're not ready to move on from Brady. But, Garoppolo's not going to sit there for 9 years, And my first instinct on the trade was, right, Garoppolo's a good quarterback, but, if Brady plays 3 more years, Garoppolo's gone. He's not waiting. Yeah. So the second round pick, I keep saying, I hope the second round pick, they take Baker Mayfield. That's my thought process on it. So it seems like how long we've been doing this with Brady? You got Hoyer, who's supposed to be the heir apparent.
Yep.
Ryan Mallett.
Yep.
And then just straight to Jimmy Garoppolo, if I'm not mistaken. Was there one bit in between?
It was Matt Castle.
You're right. Matt Castle was a filler. He was never really an heir apparent.
No, well,
he was part of the team. But
he obviously played well in 2008. But I'm saying,
right.
as far as the when Brady goes, the Mallett, the Hoyer, and the Garoppolo.
And I think Mallett was probably the strongest before Garoppolo got there, just because he was supposed to be that first-round talent, but he got busted for the underage drinking, and he had the off-the-field issues, which is why he dropped in the draft, and the Patriots were able to snag him up. It's just he never got his act together.
Yeah, and Brady keeps rolling. Every time you think Brady's going to regress, he gets better.
Yep.
He had an okay December, but the fact of the matter is if you check on VegasSquares.com, I wrote the article. He's my MVP. So,
absolutely, yeah.
It came down between him and Gurley, and I just think what Gurley did was coupled with Goff's immediate success. So I leaned more towards the fact that Brady did a lot more on his own in that aspect. But kudos to Gurley. He had a fantastic year as well. But he might be right. It might be too early for the assessment of Jimmy Garoppolo. And but you're right. Fans in New England, the second round pick was not enough.
Oh no. And my dad's initial thought, and he's a crazy conspiracy theorist of the highest order, but he thought that the reason he only went for a second rounder was because New England had an under the table agreement with Jimmy that he wouldn't sign back with San Francisco and that he would sign with New England and he would be promised the starting job. But now that San Francisco's saying that they'll franchise him,
that's the problem. He's not necessarily in complete control of his destiny.
Right. So it's just sort of a weird scenario. But yeah, I don't know how he goes for only a second rounder.
Did your dad think Lester was going to resign too when he left, when he got traded?
Oh yeah,
I think everybody thought Lester was going to resign.
Yeah, that's an entirely different podcast. I could go on his theories.
I can get down with some of that. You're my dad. My dad or your dad and me could have a beer, talk about some things, because I think the same situation in some of those aspects, that nothing's really without reason. So. I think let's take a look at some of these games. Is there anything on the docket in the NFL that really, there's a couple games that matter. We got Atlanta and Carolina.
That's probably the biggest matchup of the week.
And then you got Seattle versus the who are they playing?
Arizona.
Arizona, thank you. Other than that, you got a couple of different playoff aspiration matchups based on things that have happened before. But anything jump off the page for you guys?
Just the Atlanta-Carolina game for me.
Yeah, who's going to win that one?
Say Atlanta.
You think Atlanta wins and gets in?
I think they sneak in, yeah.
Yeah, I think for me it's that Niners-Rams game. Obviously there's no huge playoff implications there, but, being able to see Jimmy G against Jared Goff is going to be an interesting game. Seeing what Gurley can do on, that final game on the home stage before the playoffs start. Interesting, good TV, not necessarily super important.
Do you think these guys are going to be in long? Goff and Gurley.
I only see them being in
about a half,
1 or 2 drives, maybe.
Oh wow,
yeah, that's short.
Well, they don't have anything to play for, if I'm not mistaken. Rams are locked up in the 3 seed.
Pretty much, yeah.
I think that sounds right. Yeah, but still, as long as they're out there, they're out there.
Now, did the Patriots play?
Something like that.
I know not by saying do they play. Obviously they play. Everybody plays. But do they come out and actually? Do they have to make a wholehearted attempt to beat the Jets?
Yes, because they can't rely on the Browns beating the Steelers, and they need to make sure that they have home field throughout the playoffs. Because you don't want to play the AFC Championship game in Pittsburgh in January. It's not going to go well.
Do you really like the fact that it's all division games?
Oh, absolutely. Without doubt, that's how it should be. Should be the last 2 weeks of the season. They all play division opponents, but...
Yeah, I'm digging the way the schedule worked out.
Yeah, I go back and forth on it each. I mean, when there's years where we don't really have that true, like this year, we don't really have that true win or go home. I don't see a game, one of the initial games like the Falcons.
Mm-hmm.
The Falcons could lose and still get in the playoffs.
Yes.
So, I mean, I guess Seattle's in a true win or go home, but they don't really have anybody. I'm talking about on both sides of the ball. You don't have a win or go home this week, so it's going to make for a tough. It's going to make for a tough watch, I think. Obviously, the gambling aspect will make it, so that I do watch
something exciting.
But just this year, for the first time in a while, like you said, wasn't last year Packers-Lions for the division?
Yeah, that was bumped to the flex on the Sunday night game.
Yeah, so, I mean, this year you don't really have that game.
Well, we do to a certain degree with the Jaguars and Titans. The Titans need that need to hold on, plus, obviously some other things in order for them to hold on to that number 6 seed. But, because they still have Chargers and Bills that could steal that away from them.
Well, here you go. Ready? I'm going to take all of the fun. I'm going to pop the balloon that you were so interested in watching. I've just received information via VegasInsider.com. The San Francisco 49ers and the Los Angeles Rams.
Yes.
Todd Gurley and Jared Goff are not playing.
Ah, there you go.
They are not playing.
Now there's no reason to watch that game.
Now you have to mow the lawn.
Take the under on it, half.
Yeah. So, sorry to burst your bubble, but you're not going to get that. Cleveland and Pittsburgh. Le'Veon, Ben, and Brown all out. So you're telling me there's a chance that Cleveland might get their first. Of course, Cleveland might get their first win of the season.
No, I'll tell you why.
Oh, do tell. 5-paragraph essay now.
They want the parade.
Oh, that 0-16 parade you were talking about. Yeah. Did you hear about this?
I did not. What is this?
According to somebody that I know that resides back in Cleveland, I guess Dan Gilbert has set aside a possibility for a parade if they go 0-16.
Why?
Because it's Dan fucking Gilbert.
Let me ask you a question, Mr. Motor City.
Yeah.
Okay. You guys are familiar with the whole...
0-16?
No. No, you're familiar with the undefeated season with the Miami Dolphins that whenever all the teams lose, they pop champagne.
Yeah.
The question now is, do the Detroit Lions do the same thing once everyone receives their first win? Like, is the 2008 Lions sitting there going, all right, Cleveland wins, they go 1-15, and Detroit pops the old Mad Dog 2020s or something?
No, I don't see them doing that.
Oh, come on.
I still want to say they want to still be the only team in history to do that.
You think you want them to be the only team in history to do that?
Yeah.
So you want Cleveland to win?
Yes. I'm rooting for Cleveland.
But what about the parade?
Shit, there's a parade for every fucking day in the world, so.
I'll have to get the research staff to look and see parades every day of the world. I'm going to call on that one.
Sure, there's a parade out there for every little thing. Shit, you had one back in Chicago on Ferris Bueller's Day Off, and
wasn't that the Thanksgiving parade?
No, that was the German
like Oktoberfest or something.
Oh yeah, fair enough. Yeah, because it was in Chicago, not New York. You're right.
German Heritage Parade or something. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's right, because they went to the Cubs game during the day. So
yeah, that's when he was on the Cubs game, and he got caught on TV or something, right?
Right.
Like they panned on him.
It certainly wouldn't have been.
But Ed Rooney had his head turned at the time.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And he asked who was winning. It was 0-0, and he asked what team was winning. The bartender or the grill person responded, "The Bears." The Bears.
Ferris Bueller is a very underrated movie.
Oh, absolutely. One of my top 3 of all time.
I don't know if I have a top 3. Like I like a lot of movies. What's your top 3?
Top 3. Ferris Bueller's in there. I would say Top Gun, and
you realize that they've made movies after 1990, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know. I would have to toss in.
I think every time Anthony goes to bed, he's like, "I got the need for speed."
Oh, absolutely. got the aviators on?
I don't know. Like, I like movies, but like, I don't think I've ever really chronicled them. Like, I like Casino, and that's not just because we live here, but like, I like the movie Casino.
That's a nice golf
I mean,
course.
Scarface is an easier one. Where was Casino? The golf course. That was in Henderson, wasn't it?
Las Vegas National.
That was Las Vegas National.
Or, well, that was, I think, Sahara.
The thing that makes me laugh, I don't know if you guys have, you've seen Casino, right? Have you seen the movie?
Yeah.
The thing that makes me laugh is you've lived here since 2006, and we've lived here since
2015, 2014, something like that.
Yeah, I moved here in 13. So there's a part of the movie where I forget who he's speaking of specifically, but he goes, "Oh, he lives all the way out in Henderson." Like, they make it sound like out in Henderson is like another state.
Yeah.
When, I mean, you can get Henderson in 20 minutes now if you play the lights right.
Yeah.
It's just, to me, I don't know. When I watch that now that I live in Vegas, like, because I watch Casino probably a couple times a year, it just makes me laugh. And he's like, "Yeah, he's all the way out in Henderson. It's like a 45-minute ride." I was like, "No, it's not."
So it almost makes it seem like it's to Yuma, Arizona or something.
Exactly. So
No.
I don't know. I don't know. What's your favorite movie?
Favorite movie of all time? I mean,
That's a hard one. Like, I can watch
Yeah.
Jaws. Every time Jaws comes on, I don't flip it.
yeah, I'm the same way with Pulp Fiction.
Pulp Fiction's a good one.
Yeah, I rewatch it a couple times a year.
Reservoir Dogs is another good
Reservoir Dogs is amazing, yeah. But
Reservoir is good.
yeah, it's tough for me. I mean, my first actual job was in a video rental store back in the day when they had those things.
Blockbuster?
No, it was actually a mom and pop shop that I wish I could have stayed out longer, but they got shut down for pirating films.
A lot of places, a lot of the
Yeah.
mom and pop shop got
Yeah,
shut down for
yeah.
that shit.
Yeah, it was crazy. I actually had a customer come in one day, hand me a porn and say, "Pop this in the VCR." I'm like, "I'm not going to do that on the store." He goes, "Just trust me. Just play for like 10 seconds." I popped it in. The first like minute and a half of the tape was a C-SPAN rerun that my managers or owners forgot to edit off the beginning of the tape. It was like, oh.
So they edited porn?
Yeah, they just, they copied it.
Oh,
they owned,
yeah. Well, yeah.
they
'cause I
owned
guess
like
you push
3 or
record.
4
God, that was so
stores.
long ago. VCRs.
Yeah,
And shit.
so this was back 95, 96. So they would have 4 or 5 different stores, so they would just buy one copy of the tape and then
And
make
just cut it a
copies
bunch
at
of
home. But you
Fantastic.
start the blank tape too early, you're going to get whatever's on TV.
Who would even record C-SPAN, though?
Apparently,
It's
they
at some
were
point,
watching
yeah.
C-SPAN. I
So
don't
let
know.
me ask you. So I've always heard the myth. Like, I don't know about Blockbuster specifically or Hollywood Video, any of those, but I heard a lot of those places, those old mom and pop shops, they had like a back room where you would go to
Oh, absolutely.
rent porn. I mean,
Yeah, and it wasn't. We didn't make it a secret because it was like 60% of our business.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
Did you ever see that movie Be Kind, Rewind?
No,
It was with like Mos
Jack
Def
Black?
and Jack Black.
Yeah.
Where they like, do you remember that? The plot of that movie? They, I don't know, whatever happened, they erased all of the content on all these movies. So they went out and filmed their own versions of the movies to replace it's fantastic. You have to see it. It's a very underrated movie. I don't know how we got off the rails. What are we talking about?
I have no idea.
What are we talking about?
I think we're talking about Jason Garrett for Coach of the Year.
Yes,
Is
Jason.
that where we left off?
Yes.
No, we left off on the Browns going 0-16.
Browns
yeah.
going on 16, and that's how we went to Ferris Bueller. Holy cow,
there
6
we go.
degrees of Kevin Bacon. Speaking of bacon, there's a lot of guys who are standing to earn bonuses in this one, this year at week 17.
Yes.
I'd like to play the bonus game here, gentlemen. It's real simple. The rules are clear. You're going to tell me if they get the bonus or if they don't. Thumbs up, thumbs down, which don't do that because we're on the radio or we're on a podcast. So thumbs up, thumbs down doesn't really help the listener.
Yeah, that was the best radio voice ever, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. So let's jump into the bonus game. Basically, a yes or no answers. And we'll start with Rob Gronkowski. He can earn $2.5 million by achieving 80 catches or 1,200 yards. He's 11 catches away from 80, and he's 116 yards away from 1,200.
No, he doesn't get there.
Either one of those.
No, they'll target him enough times for him to get it, but I think that the Jets, whether or not they're aware of it, they're going to be able to defend at least a few of those. They'll knock him away. I can't see him getting there.
I don't see him getting the catches, but I see him having a possibility for the yards.
Yeah, I think Gronk's going to be motivated. $2.5 million.
That's a huge
It's
chunk.
a lot of chips. It's a lot of Yosoi Fiestas.
Yeah.
All right, Marshawn Lynch. This one's low-hanging fruit. To get 800 yards, he'll earn $600,000. He needs 10 rushing yards.
As long as they're not in the red zone, he gets there.
Say he gets it
As long as they're not on offense, he gets there.
I say he gets it unless if he like punches the official right in the face or something.
I'm not gonna lie. I know that no one listening saw that, but that whole segue from movies to 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon to earning bacon, I'm not gonna lie. I'm a little proud of myself on that one. You're welcome, America.
Yourself a pat on the back.
Marshawn Lynch, 10 yards, yay or nay?
Yeah.
God, I would hope so.
No.
After the train wreck he's had this year.
Also if he like smacks an official or something.
Which is not out of the realm of possibility. Does he get bonus for that? Because I feel like he's trying to earn bonuses for getting thrown out of games.
He might get a bonus for not doing it.
Yeah, potentially. Hey,
for a certain amount.
Hey, Marshawn, shape up. We'll give you some side money. All right, Brandon Graham has a chance for $500,000 through 2 separate performance bonuses. Brandon Graham is of the Eagles. He is 2.5 sacks away from 12. 12 would earn him $250K. And if he earns a Pro Bowl or All-Pro selection, he also would get an additional $250K.
My thoughts. He does at least get 1 sack, but it's not going to be 2.5. I say he falls short for that. For the Pro Bowl, I believe he will do that and be selected in the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, I completely agree. I don't think he has. I don't think he gets the sacks, but at the very least, he gets the All-Pro.
All right, we got Adrian Claiborne from the Falcons, and he had 6 sacks in 1 game. You guys remember that one against Dallas? I think it was against Dallas.
It was against Dallas, yes.
Yeah. Well, he's only had 3.5 sacks the rest of the season. But apparently someone put in his clause that if you get 12 sacks, we will give you $2 million.
Well, he's halfway there 1 game.
So he stands to make, if he gets 2.5 sacks in the last game against Carolina, he stands to make $2 million.
Say there's a possibility for that.
I think when I made the rules very clear, this was a yes or no game.
I say no, though. And the reason why I say no is Cam Newton can scramble and avoid some tackles.
Scramble, scramble.
Yeah, no, that doesn't happen. just flat out no.
He might get 1.
All right, we got Adam Thielen. I don't know if he's going to play, but let's say for sakes he does. 80 catches gets him a $200,000 performance bonus. He's 5 catches away.
It's no for me.
I think that's a yes for me. I don't know how much he would be used in that game, but I think, everybody on that staff's going to be aware of it. And,
right.
It's not like the offensive coordinator has to pay the bonus, so what the hell? I mean, throw to him and see if he gets it.
I say he gets a few opportunities for it, but falls short.
All right.
All right, and our final one of the bonus game, it is Andrew Whitworth, the star tackle, who they just signed from Cincinnati. They took a gamble giving him a big contract for a guy who was 35 years old. He gets a $250,000 performance bonus if the Rams finish better than 13th in scoring. Now, before you answer your question, I will let you know where they stand going into Week 17. They are currently number 1.
Well, let me give a hard thought about this. That's a yes.
That's what she said.
I mean, even if Garoppolo puts up like 140 points on these guys, I don't think they drop below 13th, do they?
Well, no, this is their offense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that doesn't change anything. Garoppolo could put $1 million up.
Yeah. I'm looking at other stats here.
They would have to fall 9 points in 1 game, which I don't think that's statistically humanly possible.
Yeah, no. They're fine.
Yeah. Well, if there was one team that could do it, would be Detroit.
Yeah, the one team that could fugazi shit up is Detroit.
If there was a way to get negative points, they'd be the first ones to find that out.
I've been kind of racking my brain on this one with the end of the year, obviously coming up. We've got bowl season, and then in February we've got the big game. Where is it this year? Minnesota, I think?
Yeah.
Now, it's changed a lot. And Spike, I know you don't necessarily watch a lot of college football, but back when I was a kid, New Year's Day was like the cream of the crop for bowl games. Now you got a couple of games that no one gives a shit about, but what's a better day, in your opinion, a better day of watching football? Is it the Super Bowl or is it the New Year's Day slate of bowl games?
New Year's Day slate of bowl games.
Just simple because there's more?
I would say simple variety because there's more. There's a lot more tradition with it. what the Rose Bowl has been going, 80 plus years?
Yes, I think close to 100, if I'm not mistaken.
It might be, yeah.
Yeah, I thought about this. I mean, the Super Bowl is such a great one-day, 4-hour viewing spectacle. You don't always get the greatest game. So, I mean, that kind of, and with the Patriots, you're always going to get a close game.
Yeah.
But, I mean, some games have been blowouts. Some games have been really uninteresting. I mean, I remember Seattle and Pittsburgh playing, and I'm just like, I'm okay if I miss this one. And I don't really say that about a lot. Nobody says that about a Super Bowl who's an NFL fan.
Yeah.
There's been a couple. I think you're right. New Year's Day, you got 5-6 games potentially to watch. You're going to, odds are you're going to get 3 or 4 good ones.
Right. And not just that. And I'm going to agree with you guys that the New Year's Day games are going to be a better football watching experience, even if you are only able to watch the one game, even if you only have the time, because you can pick the matchup that best suits your interest as a fan. Like, if you want a solid defense, grind them out in the trenches type game, you should be able to find something like that. If you want a game that has the potential to go 85-75, the Giants scoring, just nobody punts, nobody cares, you can find a game that best suits your interests as a football fan. Yeah.
But college football, you're right. The 6 games, and we're coming up on New Year's Day, and
an exciting time. And we've got some exciting guests coming aboard the Vegas Squares podcast. We have Chris and Tyler from the podcast Winnin' and Boozin'. Name caught my eye on Twitter, and of course I had to give these guys a shout. Hit them up for some college football knowledge. Gentlemen, it's great to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. Yeah, absolutely, man.
All right, Chris, I am going to lead off with you, sir. And obviously, social media is a fantastic thing, being able to, connect. You guys are, on the East Coast, we're on the West Coast. But how does something like Winnin' and Boozin' just kind of, formulate out of your minds?
I love puns. I'm a big pun man. So I've been writing this article for about 4 years now, and this is the fifth year. So I've been writing this article, and I've always been a huge college football fan, and just I also have been a big fan of booze for about over a decade now, and so I would write this article about, basically I had the idea of covering games and having in-depth analysis, but then also attaching a booze. I always thought it'd be fun if somebody attached a booze with each tailgate. And since I do comedy and stand-up and stuff like that, most of my humor is satire, but most of it is me talking trash. But that just, kind of stuck out in my mind. And, winning and boozing is a lot more fun than that. And so that's kind of where it started from.
Yeah, I can definitely see the concept formulate in your mind. Win or lose, we still booze. So, as a comedian, I know we talked to Tyler about this. The drinking aspect in it. You talk about what cocktails go with different games. I mean, how does that stuff kind of come into your mind as far as what team kind of coincides with what drink, kind of coincides with what game, and how does all that stuff kind of just become something?
Well, a lot of it, what I try to do is figure out, again, a lot of it is me talking trash about different teams and stuff like that. And I like to try to, give it to everyone. But basically, whatever is most relevant, whether it be, for that game, if it's a big game, you want to choose something that's a little bit, higher in regard for a top shelf liquor, if you will. But also, I love going into the stereotypical stuff. We'll get into that a little bit, I guess, you'll see today. But I think there's just so many different stereotypes you could definitely play off of, especially in the South, with different drinks and stuff like that. And I think one of my favorites we had for Georgia a couple of years ago, I predicted them to lose to Missouri. I was one of the few people that did. And I said it should be Bloody Mary because it was a noon kickoff with Tito's. And it hit me when I was doing it. I was like, what would be better than that is not like Tito's, the vodka, like the homeless dude Tito's, and just grab his bottle on the way home and just drink yourself until you fall asleep. So it's stuff like that. That I always think it's sometimes take it a little bit too far, but also keep it in good fun as well.
That's fantastic. What you say you're in the South? What part of the South are you guys based out of?
Yeah, so we're based out of Atlanta. Both Chris and I both grew up here in the Atlanta area. And Atlanta, you know, at least the way we think of it, is kind of the epicenter of college football. You know, we've got the SEC down here, which is big. Obviously the ACC as well. And, you know, I went to Florida State for college, and so obviously a big-time football school.
Here we go.
And,
I knew I liked this guy, a Florida State grad. All right, that's my man.
Yeah, and Chris and I actually met. We had a mutual friend that we were both in his wedding, and Chris needed a ride up to the bachelor party, so I offered to drive.
Well,
we kind of
didn't have to say that. Yeah, sure.
we kind of bonded.
He had too much boozing and winning,
yeah.
so I get it.
Right. So we kind of bonded over that trip, and realized that we were both huge college football guys. And you know, Chris is a big Alabama fan, and Florida State and Alabama were facing off at the beginning of this year in Atlanta. And we were texting about the game, and you know, I was like, we should just we talk college football so much, let's just turn it into a podcast. And so kind of took off from there, and we've our listenership has grown heavily this year, so it's been really good.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's a lot of fun.
It's crazy how those things kind of start. You know, Anthony and I have been friends for 3 years. We talk sports, we bullshit with each other, and we're like, shit. I mean, I was in radio for 4 years. I still have all the equipment. Let's set the damn mics up. I mean, I get it, man. It almost seems like it's a match made in heaven. But, you know, you're talking about Florida State grad, so I share your sentiments with that one. We had a rough season, but that Florida State Alabama game was the start of the downhill. Let's talk about. I was looking at your Twitter. You guys had some fun, almost Barstool style, at the College Football Awards show. What was that like?
Yeah, Chris, I'll let you tap on that.
Man, that's a lot of fun. I actually, I handle the MC, the tailgate for the College Football Hall of Fame every Saturday. They do at the Home Depot tailgate series there throughout the year, and so we got invited to go to the award show, and we got invited, but I didn't realize it was going to be like there was a lot of people that were invited, and there was also like extras that were just like creepy autograph hounds. So okay. Tyler and I got dressed like in our Sunday best, and went down there, and it was a lot of fun. We got to meet a lot of the players, and we got to sit through the ceremony, and then also we got to meet Mike Gundy.
Oh, yeah.
The Mike Gundy, I'm a man, I'm 40 Mike Gundy?
That's right.
Oh, yeah.
One and the same.
That's right. Mr. Mullet himself.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that guy's just full of shit up his sleeve. I mean, so how did that interaction go with Mike?
Swimmingly. So he and I believe their tight end, they were accepting an award from Maria Taylor from ESPN. And so he's like, Mike was also famous this year for whatever unknown reason. He took his shirt off at their like homecoming pep rally, and so was it Mason Rudolph or was it tight end, Tyler?
Yeah, it was Mason Rudolph.
So it was Mason Rudolph, their quarterback, and then Mike Gundy. So they're interviewing him, and so as the interview's ending, I just yelled out, I was like, "All right, Mike, let's do one more. This time, shirt off." And we had a nice little banter back and forth after that. It was nice. And then we got to go into the actual ceremony as well, which was great.
That's pretty cool, because I know that the College Football Awards are a good time, especially in Orlando. I was covering them a couple years when I was down in that area.
Oh, yeah. Chris and Tyler, where's the best place to view your content and all your podcasts and all that?
Yeah, so we upload it on iTunes, and it's also on Podbean. We've got the Twitter and the Instagram, which are at Winning and Boozing, that's winning the letter N and boozing. And we've also got a Facebook page as well, which is the Winning and Boozing Podcast. And you know, we're every time we record, we'll drop a link on there, and we're constantly tweeting about college football in general on there as well. So go check us out all over the place on social media.
All right, boys. Well, let's dive in and get some thoughts. You say you talk about college football, so we're going to put you to the test. My first question is, what are your thoughts on the 377 bowl games that we have every year, give or take, 150?
Well, we're both gambling guys, and despite not knowing much about, Western Kentucky versus Middle Tennessee State or whatever the matchups are, they're fun to gamble on. I think the more bowls, the better, to be honest with you, man. You see some crazy stuff. Last night, I was watching the TCU-Stanford game, and on a kickoff, the TCU guys literally laying down in the end zone trying to blend in with the colors to pick out Stanford. And so they pull out all the stops in the bowls, and I love watching that kind of stuff. So I say
pull out all the stops, like not being able to cover a 2.5 point spread. You bought down from 3.
Never buy the hook.
Yeah.
Never buy the hook. Yeah, it's definitely fun. You got some coin on it. It makes them a lot easier to watch, or maybe a little more bearable to watch. But yeah, when there's 450 bowls, having some change on them definitely. Let's talk about the coaches. There's definitely been a carousel. We'll touch on a couple of coaches here briefly. Obviously, you have the Fisher Taggart carousel. Being Florida State guys, you and I had some initial thoughts. I've been ready for Fisher to go for about 2 years since he's been flirting with LSU and the rest of the SEC West.
Yeah,
Tyler, what were your thoughts on Fisher leaving and Taggart stepping in?
I was definitely, I was on the Fisher train until the beginning of this year, and to me, the excuses that Fisher was making for losing were unacceptable. And you started to see that he was unwilling to change his offense.
The adjustments.
Francois goes down. You gotta, if you've misrecruited your backup, which was a 4th-year junior that can't play football, and you're resorting to a true freshman, change up your offense. And so he's known for having one of the most difficult offenses to learn, especially for college. And so you got to change it up when you've got a true freshman. And so I'm with you, man. I was kind of plus flirting with LSU every other year. I was just ready for him to go. And so to me, Taggart was the perfect hire. He's from Florida. He recruits it extremely well. Even when he was at Oregon, he had 4 or 5 commits from the state of Florida, which is, about as far away as you can get. And he's the exact opposite of Jimbo when it comes to offense. He dropped the tagline "lethal simplicity" about his offense in the press conference when he was named coach, and I think that's exactly what Florida State fans are looking for is a simple offense that just gets your athletes in space and lets them make plays.
Let's talk about Chip Kelly and his tenure starting at UCLA. He got paid quite handsomely. What do we think about Chip Kelly going over to the Bruins?
I thought it was a great pickup. I thought it was. I was surprised that they got him such a good deal at like I said, $4.6 million, I believe. I was really shocked because they got him so early in like the whole just auction style craziness that happened with head coaches. So I was really shocked that they got him at under $5 million a year. I mean, if you think about it now, almost everybody gets $5 million a year. And what was even more impressive is that he got. I think this marked $100 million in contracts he signed to be a head coach within like the last 4 years. That's incredible. He signed with I forgot who. He was the Eagles and then the Niners for 1 year, and now with UCLA, he's now signed over $100 million in contracts for roughly 3 total years.
That's the beautiful thing. You just got to get one guy to think your shit doesn't stink. So that's all. Chip Kelly seems pretty good at it. He's got 4 guys to think his shit doesn't stink. Let's talk about Chip Kelly. I mean, not Chip Kelly, but Dan Mullen. Chip Kelly was almost headed to Gainesville. I'm thinking Chip Kelly's thought process was, I don't really want Gainesville guys sitting on my lawn every time we lose, an SEC game. So he bolted to the West. But Dan Mullen's got the tie-ins, obviously. Tyler, you're fully aware of what Dan Mullen has done in Florida. We will skip over that.
Yep.
But let's talk about his new tenure in Gainesville.
Yeah, it's I like to take shots at Florida and Miami when I can, and I thought it was funny that Florida was basically having to settle for their 3rd or 4th choice, depending on who you believe on who they offered the job to. But I think at the end of the day, I think they actually ended up with the right guy. I mean, Chip Kelly, as good of a coach as he is, he's not really a Southeast guy. I mean, he's West Coast. I don't think he would have been able to recruit that well at Florida. Mullen obviously was the OC there in 2006 and 2008 with Tebow when they won the championship. He's really good with quarterbacks, which Florida has not had since Tim Tebow's time there.
Right.
And I think, with that offense that he runs, I think it'll do really well there at Florida.
Well, you talked about Mullen being the third or fourth choice for Florida. I think I lost count about day 3 of the search and the dumpster fire that is Tennessee football.
Oh, my God.
But, I mean, I think that at the end of the day, their 37th choice, Jeremy Pruitt, was probably a pretty good one.
Yeah,
I see. I'm going to have to disagree.
Oh, okay. All right. Fair enough.
I'm biased as a Bama fan, and I hate that the third year in a row they're going to go in the playoffs with a coach on his way out. But I don't think you got to keep in mind. First off, this is a man who didn't know what asparagus was 10 years ago.
He was on MTV. Give him a chance.
I didn't think he was ready to be a head coach. I didn't think he had enough experience. I mean, the guy was a defensive backs coach for not even the defensive coordinator, the defensive backs coach for a high school, literally a decade ago.
Mm-hmm.
Albeit a good high school. I think for like you said, it was like their 37th choice, and for I don't say where they stood because of what they turned it into themselves. It was a great hire for those circumstances. That being said, all of those circumstances could have been avoided if they weren't idiots. The entire process of that coaching hire.
Yeah, I mean, I guess he's following the celebrity approach. I mean, Arnold can be governor, Trump can be president, Jeremy Pruitt's is on MTV. He can be the damn Tennessee football coach.
Yeah. Very good point.
It's the world we live in now. And, I being a Florida State and UCF alum, the Scott Frost thing kind of rubs me the wrong way. The way that it kind of came out, on TV during the American Championship. What are your thoughts on Frost now moving basically back home, and how that kind of all went down?
Yeah, actually, out of all the guys that were kind of had their names floated out there and were interviewed while they were still with their old teams, I felt like Scott Frost handled it the best. He basically said, "I love Nebraska; it's my home. I also love UCF. I just want to focus on my team right now." And that's the way you handle it. You look at the way that Jimbo Fisher handled the rumors of 4-6. It was a disaster.
Right.
And so, as far as Scott Frost going to Nebraska, I mean, I think this is a splash hire for them. I don't think they left out that he's a Lincoln guy. He's a hometown guy. He's gonna make an instant impact there. They haven't been relevant since the 90s, and I think he's gonna bring some credibility back to that program. Runs an up-tempo offense, so I think it fits Nebraska's personnel very well. And I think he'll do well in the Big Ten, who's typically known for running those slow and plodding offenses. I think he'll do pretty well there.
Yeah, I think he definitely, you're right. He brings stability and credibility, and, he was obviously the last guy to bring a national title over there, playing quarterback. He definitely didn't give him a hometown discount. I can definitely tell you that. He didn't give him one of those. But let's talk about the first of the New Year's Six starts tonight, which to me is weird. We call them the New Year's Six, but there's one on the 29th. So, anyways.
It makes no sense, man.
Yeah, exactly. So let's talk about them. We've got USC and Ohio State. Ohio State's given 8 points to the Trojans. What are your guys' thoughts on the Cotton Bowl?
Everyone's preseason Heisman pick, Sam Darnold, going off against my preseason Heisman pick, JT Barrett. I was shocked by the 8 points, which is very concerning because I overanalyze everything, and that just screams to put all the money that I have, all $700 of it, on USC. I'll let Tyler break down the game because he's better at that, and then I'll tell you my booze of choice at the end.
All right.
Yeah, sure. I think, Sam Darnold kind of started off the year. He was my preseason Heisman pick. Obviously, he was kind of the darling of the media, and he started off kind of rough with the turnovers. And down the stretch has been really good. 14 touchdowns with 3 interceptions over the last 7 games. Their running back, Ronald Jones, has been a beast on the ground this year. But Ohio State has the number 1 rush defense. And so I think Ohio State, with Urban Meyer, he has a really good bowl record. I think he's 10-3 in bowls. I think it could be a close game. But I think in the second half, the Buckeyes are going to pull away here. I'm looking for big games from J.K. Dobbins and J.T. Barrett in his last game. And, I just trust Urban Meyer a lot more than Clay Helton. He's a lot better of a coach. And so I'm going to go Ohio State to cover.
Fair enough. And what should we be drinking when we're watching the Cotton Bowl? I can only imagine.
And I will say also, just piggybacking on what you said, I would definitely, after watching Notre Dame just run roughshod over USC's defense, it would be hard for me not to go with that backfield with Ohio State. But the drink of choice is going to be an old fashioned. This is just a classic matchup. You're going to want to put that old fashioned with Four Roses, which is just a perfect metaphor, guys. Perfect metaphor, because usually these two teams are playing in the Rose Bowl, which they're not. But also, they were both left out of the top four, much to the chagrin of me as a Bama fan. So I think a little bit of Four Roses, a little bit of some orange bitters.
I was just say bitters.
Still a little bit. Yeah, exactly. And that's what I would go with. But I would agree with Tyler on this one. I would think, for whatever reason, I just not going to trust my own instincts. It's something I've learned. I would think Ohio State will cover.
Fair enough. We got Ohio State in the cover and a drink of perennial powerhouses, the old fashioned. I like that. So here's one I got for you. I'm interested to see the drink of choice on this. We got Washington and we have Penn State. Penn State laying a deuce.
Yeah.
Don't tell me you're going to put Tostitos in your drink. Or it's not even the Tostitos flavor.
No. Both these teams were actually looking like playoff teams at one point this season. I mean, they were both at one point in the AP top 5. Penn State ended up losing back-to-back games against Ohio State and Michigan State by a combined 4 points. And Washington kind of lost a head-scratcher on the road against Arizona State. But they're both really solid teams. With Penn State, obviously you saw it with Saquon Barkley and Trace McSorley. They've got a really balanced offensive attack. When I'm looking at stats, I typically look at advanced metrics, the S&P Plus. And they're 5th in passing in the country and 4th in rushing. So they've had a really solid season offensively. They were kind of a product of a weak schedule. I mean, they only played 3 teams inside the top 30, and they lost to 2 of them. But the key to beating them is it's easier said than done, but it's stopping Saquon on the ground. I mean, those 2 losses that they had, he only had 44 rushing yards against Ohio State and 63 against Michigan State. So they really bottled him up. And I think that bodes well for Washington because they've got a really good rush defense, and they're the number 1 team in the country in not allowing explosive plays. I expected a little bit more from Jake Browning this season. I mean, you take a look at last year, he had 3,400 yards passing and 43 touchdowns, versus this year he had about 1,000 yards left and only 18 touchdowns. But the offense is really centered around Myles Gaskin, the running back for Washington, and he's had a huge year. Almost 1,300 yards rushing, 19 touchdowns. He's been really good out of the backfield as a receiver. And keep an eye on Dante Pettis. He gets targeted a ton by Browning. He's got over 30% of Browning's passes targeted to him. And he's a huge factor in special teams. When you've got a matchup like this where you've got 2 very similar teams, sometimes you got to look at those X factors. And Dante Pettis has returned 4 punts for touchdowns this year, which is huge. So, for me, breaking this one down, one thing that I saw that kind of stuck out to me is that Penn State has struggled mightily in the fourth quarter on defense, and Washington is one of the better second-half teams on offense. And so I think this one's going to be close, but I think Myles Gaskin will take over in the second half and down the stretch there, and I think Washington's going to win this one outright.
I think one thing Tyler touched on, especially with Pettis, is one big stat that just goes unnoticed a lot, probably partially because of the name, is, hidden yardage. And that's going to be massive. The difference in yards he's going to make up in special teams. But I think it is going to be impressive and a great game to watch in terms of you have Gaskin, you have Barkley. Both those players led their conference in touchdowns this year. So I think it'll be a tight game defensively because they are going to rely on the run a decent amount. I think Browning just lost so much on offense with guys like John Ross leaving and getting, it's a first-round draft pick who was a receiver. It's hard to recover from that. The booze of choice for this one, it is going to be themed around our boy Saquon Barkley. It's a Tostitos Festival. We're not going to use any chips in the drink. We are going to use Mezcal Margarita. Have you guys heard of Mezcal?
Yes.
Of course you have, because it could not be more in the now and hyped and just more overrated, just like Saquon was.
There
everyone thought he was going to Heisman in September. It's very smoky in flavor, which, again, perfect metaphor, because smoke and mirrors is exactly what his Heisman contention was back in September. And also, for me, because I thought Washington was going to make the playoffs, and I had them picked to win the Pac-12 at the start of the year. So we're going to go to Mezcal Margarita.
That's fair enough. I'm interested in these drinks. I might have to just concoct them myself. That's pretty good one. I like that one. So I'm interested. So let's go forward. I'm interested in the next two because they actually have flavors in their name. So we'll start with the Peach Bowl, and that is UCF, a 9.5 underdog at the moment, versus Auburn in your neck of the woods.
Yeah. And by the way, I took a listen to one of your podcasts, and I know you guys have said you're looking forward to getting down to the Mercedes-Benz Stadium. I got to tell you, it is incredible. You're going to be very impressed if you ever get down here to go into that stadium. But this game, breaking it down, I think it has nothing to do with looking at each team because clearly Auburn's superior athletically. It all boils down to is Auburn going to be motivated for this game. They were sky high after beating Alabama in the Iron Bowl, and people were legitimately talking about them as possibly being the best team in the nation, running the table out and winning in the national championship game. And then they came out and Georgia smoked them in that SEC championship game in the same building. You take a look at UCF, they were winless just 3 years ago. There's guys on this team that were 0-12 3 years ago, and now they're the only undefeated major college football team. Scott Frost has done a hell of a job there. It's kind of cool, but kind of strange that he's staying with the entire staff to coach this game. I think it's going to keep the team pretty motivated. Like I said before, man, he's just gone about this whole process the right way. And they're going to be very motivated. Look, they're going to want to go 13-0. It's a huge accomplishment for a team like UCF. With Auburn, it all starts on offense with the SEC Offensive Player of the Year, Kerryon Johnson. When he went down to that Alabama game, going into the SEC championship game being extremely limited, it made Auburn very one-dimensional. I'm pretty sure they're going to be healthy for this game, so that's going to be obviously huge for them. And defensively, they haven't allowed more than 28 points all year, so they've got a very stout defense. But on the flip side of the ball for UCF, they haven't scored less than 31 points in any game this season. Their quarterback, McKenzie Milton, has been severely underrated this year. He's number 2 in the nation in passing efficiency and completion percentage, which is crazy because he's also number 6 in passing yards per completion, meaning he's throwing the ball deep a ton, and he's doing it very well. UCF seems very confident. Their leading rusher, Adrian Killens, came out in the media and said that Auburn hasn't seen speed like UCF before, which is interesting considering they play in the SEC.
Dumb.
But, UCF, obviously, very confident.
Well, let me ask you, before Chris, I get to you, I'll pose this to both of you. The question I have is, has Auburn kind of, for lack of a more PC term, has Auburn kind of blown their load on this season with, all of the playoff talk, all of the beating Alabama?
Great term.
My question is their Super Bowl over, and are they just kind of like, let's get into the off season?
I think that it's possible. I actually compare this game a lot to a game that I went to a couple years ago in the Peach Bowl, Florida State versus Houston. And you got to think, since the college football playoffs started, the group of 6 is actually 2-1 against the Power 5 in these New Year's 6 bowl games. And, I was at the game in 2015. Florida State clearly didn't want to be there. They had a disappointing season. Houston was freaking fired up for that game. They're swaying on the sidelines, just getting all fired up. Tom Herman, the douchebag that he is just jumping all over the field. And I know UCF doesn't really have that good of a defense. So I fully expect guys like Kerryon Johnson and Ryan Davis and Darius Slayton for Auburn to get theirs in this game. But I seriously question how motivated Auburn is going to be played in this game. And if I'm placing a bet, I may wait to make a live bet in game to see how Auburn shows up, and then making my wager. But in a game like this, when you've got a team like Auburn that's clearly superior to UCF in all facets of the game, you're either going to want to take one of two routes. You're either going to want to take the favorite and the points, or you just want to take the underdog in the money line if you're betting before the game. And I actually wouldn't be surprised at all if UCF came out and won this game outright, to be honest with you.
I would agree. And I actually ran into 4 Central Florida players yesterday, and I harassed them on the street corner, and I was like, hey, guys, make sure y'all beat Auburn. And they said, oh, we will. And I laughed, but they're not going to. But I was like, I'm a Bama fan, roll, Golden Knights, roll.
Roll Knights.
The thing is, it's 9.5 points for a team that is undefeated and put up ridiculous amounts of points in every single game. I mean, if you watch some of those late games, and granted, they are playing against Memphis and South Florida, those are some of the most exciting games of the entire year. They're a lot of fun to watch. Scott Frost is coaching through the bowl game. What does Auburn have to prove at this point? Like, I mean, I think it was crass and inappropriate, but that's how I live my life on a daily basis, man. You framed it perfectly. They blew their load early in November. And, you know, they had an impressive season, but what do you have to prove at this point? Like, you're going back to the building you just got boat raced in, like, less than a month ago by Georgia. And your coach just signed a new contract. He has no worries of getting fired. He signed a 7-year deal for $7 million a year. What do you have to prove? Like, there's games like this. This is my biggest fear before Bama got in the playoffs was, shit, we're going to go to the Peach Bowl and have to play Central Florida and lose. Just like they did with Utah. There's nothing to gain from an elite program like Auburn in a game like this. I think they'll win because I don't think Central Florida will be physical enough for 60 minutes, but I think Central Florida will cover. The booze of choice is going to be a Jack and Coke, which could not be more Southern, since this game's based out of Atlanta. But it's going to be a frozen slushy Jack and Coke from one of my favorite spots in Atlanta, Victory Sandwich Bar. It's supposed to be 35 degrees for the high on New Year's Day in Atlanta.
Can't wait.
They're doing a parade, which apparently I didn't know this, Tyler. We have every year in the city for the Peach Bowl, starting at 8 a.m. So it's going to be a brisk 18 degrees at the start of that, which will be no one will be there for that at all.
Challenge accepted.
So I'm going to say. Challenge accepted. I'll see you there. So I'm going to say frozen Jack and Coke slushy from Victory. And the main reason why is because at Victory Sandwich Bar, they have an awesome little game room with a ping pong, I don't want to say court because I can't think of the other word. What's the word I'm looking for, Tyler?
Table.
That's it. God dang it, Chris. A ping pong table. If you win, you don't get anything. You don't even get a participation trophy, which is perfect because that's exactly what Auburn's going to get once they win this Peach Bowl.
So victory is better than varsity, huh?
Yeah. You're starting the new year off right. You're trying to get healthy. You don't need varsity in your life. That's going to literally weigh you down for at least a week.
Fair enough. I'll send Auburn a bunch of gift cards for the varsity so they can check it out before the game.
There you go. I like
load
that.
them down. All right, let's move to Miami. And the Canes and the Badgers are laying 5 in Miami's home turf. This one's a little bit puzzling to me.
Yeah, I as a Florida State alum again, I love the poke fun of Miami, and you know, it is a home game, but they don't actually have their own home stadium. They actually have to drive out to a pro stadium to play their games because they are too cheap to actually have a stadium on their own campus. But yeah, I mean, it's essentially a home game for Miami. They played very well at home this year. I think they were underdogs to both Virginia Tech and Notre Dame, and ended up blowing both teams out. Obviously, Miami was famous this year for turning the ball over. They had a turnover chain. 16 different players from Miami created at least one turnover, which is crazy. They had 30 total. And conversely, Wisconsin was extremely turnover prone. Their quarterback, Alex Warnerbrook, threw 15 interceptions this year. And Jonathan Taylor, who's got a great name, on our podcast, Chris and I always like to make the sound that Wilson makes on Home Improvement because Jonathan Taylor is on that show. So Jonathan Taylor, he, as good as he was this year, he lost 5 fumbles. So they're very turnover prone. But the one thing that people aren't talking about is that Wisconsin quietly had a ton of turnovers themselves on defense. They caused 26 in their own right, and they had 6 guys on their defense that were either first or second team All Big Ten. So for this one, I think Miami is going to want to avoid being in passing downs. Wisconsin has thrived in those scenarios all year, and Miami's quarterback Malik Rozier has been pretty damn bad down the stretch, especially without the top 2 receivers and Amon Richards and Chris Herndon. They got absolutely smoked by Clemson in that ACC game, and also off the Pitt down the stretch. So also Miami's really not that great at stopping the run this year, and Jonathan Taylor for looking past his fumble issues has been absurd for Wisconsin this year. I mean, this guy's a true freshman. He finished 6th in the Heisman vote. And if he gets more than 79 yards in this bowl game, he's going to break Adrian Peterson's record for rushing yards as a freshman. I mean, to me, he's gone under the radar. But he's extremely good. And I think Wisconsin's going to do what they do best in this game, which is play really good defense and run the ball down your throat. And I think if Wisconsin can limit the turnovers, which is a big if, I think they can win this game going away. but I do think Miami is going to force some turnovers and keep this one close. But ultimately, I just think Wisconsin's the better team. So, was it 4.5 right now? I'm going to take 28-24 Wisconsin, and I got Miami covering, but Wisconsin winning.
So what I take from that is you obviously got Miami covering, but I take that you gentlemen think Jonathan Taylor is a better name than Hornibrook. Am I getting that right?
I didn't say that.
Am I getting that right?
I didn't say that.
That's the best name in college football, in my opinion, Alex Hornibrook. So, all right.
Oh, man.
So what's our drink of choice for the Orange Bowl?
I'm kind of with him, though. I think – so here's one stat that I've hung on to forever. 73% of teams that are an underdog by 5 or 5.5 points end up covering the spread. And I believe like 62% of them went outright. So I would take the cover here, hands down. The drink is going to be Land Shark. Are you gentlemen familiar with Land Shark?
Yes, that is a pretty good beer. That's the Jimmy Buffett beer, correct?
I'm gonna have to disagree with you on one part of that. It is factual that it is Jimmy Buffett. I think as white people, there's few things white people love more than privilege, pleated khakis, and also Jimmy Buffett. Just absolutely love, and maybe the Cupid Shuffle. I don't know, but
fair enough.
Is probably he's easily top 5 power rankings for most hated people in my life. I'm really not a fan of Jimmy Buffett, and I don't think he's a great musician. I don't think it's a great beer. It's just knockoff Corona. It's like Costco Corona.
See, I think it tastes better than Corona, but I think we could have another podcast about that.
We're going to have to go, guys. I think our time's up.
No, I think that it's not. In my opinion, it's not a great beer. What I will say is both of these teams could not have been more overrated, just like this beer is for me. Wisconsin somehow navigated and skated through a whole season without having to play Penn State or Ohio State or anybody ranked in the top 25 until like the second week in November because they were in like the weak division of the Big Ten. And Miami, tell me the last time Mark Richt ever won a big game. I'll wait. I'll just wait.
Fair enough.
I think this is going to be a close game, but it's going to be like midget wrestling. It's not going to be fun to watch. It's going to be very, very inefficient for most of it. And a Land Shark is the perfect drink of choice for it.
All right. So I'm going to drink a Land Shark while I watch midget wrestling. I think you've enticed me to flip on the Orange Bowl.
Welcome to Saturday night, brother.
Yeah, boy. I give me what? Jerry Lawless and Keith Jackson on the call.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I love it.
All right, let's get into the big boys here. Then the first question I have, we have our 4 teams. We have UGA, Oklahoma, Clemson, and Bama. And I think I know Chris's answer, but I'm going to pose this up to both of you. Did the committee get it right?
Yeah, I think we definitely know Chris's answer, but I'm going to agree with him. I think Clemson was probably pretty pissed when they saw that Alabama got in over Ohio State. Considering last year, Clemson got to face off with Ohio State in the first round of the playoffs, and Ohio State didn't score a point. And Ohio State they weren't that strong this year. I mean, they got blown out by Iowa, for God's sake. So Alabama, people forget they were number 1 all year, and they had a slip up against Auburn there when Auburn was kind of on fire. And I'm imagining that Clemson, it was kind of their worst nightmare seeing Bama get in. But, I mean, Bama was one of the best teams all year.
Sure.
And if you're going to have a 4-team playoff, they're the perfect fourth team to get in, despite not winning the SEC.
I will say, and I'll be as objective as possible, because, I mean, you guys are right. Like, I know I'm biased, and I'll see it through Crimson glasses. But the thing is, I think that Bama kind of, I don't want to say suffered, but Bama was kind of a victim of their own success, which happens a decent amount. But they were getting penalized for not winning prettily enough against Mississippi State, which was a ranked team on the road at night. And they were that was like one of the main arguments was, well, they barely beat Mississippi State. And I was like, they beat them. They beat it they beat a team by however many points on the road. You're talking about an Ohio State team that I think had a stronger schedule. They did win their conference, but they did so many underwhelming things throughout the season, that it was hard to, like, how do you get over a 31-point loss, like lost by 31 to an unranked team? Bama didn't give up 30 points to a team all season. And the last time they lost to an unranked team was 74 games ago. So I didn't really think it was that close. But again, like, I'm biased. I think they got it right. And the biggest reason is what Tyler said. I mean, if you put Ohio State in there and I get their conference champion, even though that's never been said as a criteria, to get in. Do you really want to see Clemson and Ohio State, which you saw last year, from, in my opinion, a better Ohio State team? And this is not Bama's best team, but a better Ohio State last year, they got blanked 31-0.
Yeah, you're right. Give me the trilogy in that spot. So let's start with the Sugar Bowl, and you got Clemson and Alabama, and Alabama's laying a field goal.
Yeah, I kind of broke this down. Obviously, it's a rematch of the last two national championship games, and I broke this down. Clemson offense versus Alabama defense first. Clemson's done a great job of replacing a ton of talent that they lost the NFL last year. You know, you're talking about guys like Deshaun Watson, Mike Williams, Wayne Gallman. I mean, these guys were big-time starters for Clemson last year. Kelly Bryant stepped in, and when he was healthy, he was a really good runner. Not that great of a passer, definitely worse than Deshaun. But they've got a different offense this year, you know, whereas they had Mike Williams and Leggett last year and Artavis Scott, these big-body receivers going down the field. They've got a different set of skills this year. They've got Deion Kane, Hunter Renfrow, and Ray McLeod, who are all small receivers. They're good in their own right, but they're not going to get you the chunk plays. They're going to be chain movers that are running short routes and trying to get yards after the catch. They don't have a ton of home run hitters, but their one home run hitter is Travis Etienne, the true freshman running back. This guy's an absolute animal. He is a true home run threat for them, but he splits carries with Tavian Feaster. Their offensive line, you know, you typically think of spread teams as being like more finesse, smaller, quicker linemen, but Clemson is not a finesse spread team. Their O-line is very physical, specifically their tackles, very good. And they're going to have to try and wear out that Alabama front seven, which hasn't typically been easy to do over the years. I mean, Alabama, again, this year has a top defense. No team has allowed fewer yards or fewer points this season than them. And their D-line, they look a little different this year. Their linebackers were hurt all year, and they've got three guys that played a ton this year that are going to be out. Dylan Moses, Hootie Jones, and Sean Dion Hamilton are out this year. So you may be able, or to this game, so you may be able to run a little bit more north-south on them. But they do get two guys that they've been missing since that Florida State game back. Christian Miller and Terrell Lewis were slated to be starters this year, and both went out in that game. And then you look on the back end of their defense, they've probably got the best safety combo in the nation with Ronnie Harrison and Micah Fitzpatrick. They're going to line Fitzpatrick up all over the field. But his natural position is safety. And their two corners, Anthony Averett and Levi Wallace on the ends, are very good as well. They're all upperclassmen, typical of a Nick Saban defense. You know, you work from the DBs up. They play very well as a unit together. And so, you know, I would think that Alabama will probably have the upper edge when it comes to the defense versus the offense. Chris, I don't know if you want to add in on anything about Bama's defense.
What you're going to see is basically that front seven has been not as strong as they've been in years past. And you got to think it's like that defense last year was one of the best defenses I think Bama's ever had. And it's not the same, you know, stereotypical Nick Saban defense that like you're just not going to run the ball on them. I think Clemson's going to have success. What I think is Clemson doesn't want to see this game get into the 30s. Like their defensive line is going to have to step up and get, you know, penetrate in the Alabama's backfield like they did last year. But I think the biggest thing, like you said, the Bama's healthy. I mean, you got to keep in mind also, I know Clemson won last year, and I'm, again, biased. I go to a Clemson game every year with one of my good friends. I don't mind Clemson at all. I'm shocked at how confident and arrogant their fans have become. They won that game last year on the 99th play their offense had on the field with 1 second to go. And that was after Bo Scarborough broke his leg and was out for the fourth quarter. It's hard for me to imagine Saban losing to a guy named Dabo twice, just in general. But it's very hard for me to think that Bama, now that they're healthy with a chip on their shoulder, because it couldn't set up more perfectly for Bama. With them, I know they're favored in Vegas. That's because enough idiots will bet on Bama. It couldn't set up more perfectly for Bama to come in after a loss, trying to avenge a loss, not only against Auburn, their hated rival, but also from last year's national championship game. I think they're gonna look pretty good. But if they get behind by double digits at any point in this game, it'll be over because they don't have the kind of offense to come back from that.
Yeah, and I'll touch on that. I mean, Jalen Hurts is a passer. There's been a lot of questions about him. He's a very good runner. He's been pretty efficient. He's got 15 touchdown passes to 1 interception. But really, I mean, his game is running the ball. He had almost 900 yards rushing this year and was averaging almost 8 yards per carry. Then you take a look at a guy like Damien Harris, who did average over 8 yards per carry. At receiver, I think Bama is definitely weaker than they've been in a while. Calvin Ridley is pretty much the only guy that's been doing it for them in terms of receiving the ball. Clemson's D-line is incredible. They've got 4 first-round guys that start for them. And I think, as long as Bama can get the run game going and not allow Clemson to get in third and obvious passing situations on defense, they're going to be fine. And the biggest advantage I think that Alabama has in this game, to be honest with you, is special teams. Clemson's kicker is downright terrible. I mean, he has
real bad.
I think he's 58% on field goals this year, and the punter is averaging almost less than 40 yards per punt. And you took a look at that Texas game the other day. When you're in a close game, and I expect this game to be close, sometimes having a really good punter can be a huge asset to flip the field. And Texas punter won the MVP of their bowl game the other night. And J.K. Scott for Alabama, J.K. Scott for Alabama is one of the best punters in the country. And so I think Alabama has a decided advantage in the special teams game. And I've been back and forth on this one. I think the teams are very evenly matched here. Usually in a matchup such as this, I usually go with the better defense, but I think it's kind of tough to determine who is the better defense in this game.
Right.
I think I like Alabama's offense more than I like Clemson's, and I definitely like their special teams more. And like Chris said, when it boils down to it, I just don't see Nick Saban losing twice in a row to Dabo Swinney. So I'm going to take Alabama here, and I'm going to take them to cover 31-27.
See, there you go. Spike.
Yeah,
there you go, Spike. Some punter knowledge for you.
Go ahead.
I was just letting Spike know, the man who doesn't give a shit about college football, that you're getting in-depth punter knowledge.
It's baffling to me that people, and I'm appreciative of it. Don't get me wrong. Like, I admire the work that you're doing, but to go so in depth about a goddamn college punter is like blowing my mind.
Well, remember that time, like 30 minutes ago, you brought up women's hockey, so it's the same sense.
Touche, salesman.
I thought the WNBA was bad. I hate seeing just fundamentals and layups. I can't imagine watching women's hockey.
No, that's the NWHL is actually a really good product. It's really underrated, and there's only 4 teams, so it's all super.
So it'll be folding here in 3 or less years.
Yeah, just let me know if I can gamble on it. That's all.
There we go.
I have. Who I should be betting on. No, I'm kidding. I know, but kind of piggybacking on what Tyler said. First off, I don't remember the last time anyone has ever said Bama had a decided advantage on special teams, especially in the kicking game. I feel like that's how we lose almost every game. I just think that this society in general is like a "what have you done for me lately" type thing. And Bama went on the road against an arch rival, and they played the worst game that I've seen them play in probably a decade under Nick Saban. They fumbled 2 back-to-back snaps from the shotgun, which is nearly impossible to do. So I just think that Clemson does have a phenomenal D-line. What they lack is depth on that D-line. I think what Bama got away from in that Auburn game, besides playing well, was they ran Jalen Hurts on design runs way more often than they have at any other point this year. And I think in the second half alone, he had 9 carries on design runs, and Bo Scarborough and Damien Harris had 5 combined. So I think what they'll do is try to set the tone early, and they'll try to get some runs out on the perimeter. I do think this is the defense. If you get wide on them, you'll start to see some holes, some glaring holes. I mean, keep in mind, I understand, people have been so high on Clemson for most of the year and have shit on Bama so much as of late because they lost to the number 6 ranked team on the road in a rivalry game. Clemson lost to Syracuse, guys.
Don't get me wrong. Syracuse. I've been preaching that for 6 weeks now. So yeah, you're preaching the choir.
Not Jim Brown Syracuse, not Donovan McNabb Syracuse, not Greg Paulus basketball Syracuse. We're talking about Syracuse football right now. Even Frank's got to appreciate that. That is just, I know they're really good, and I'm not going to discount that at all. It's just hard for me to imagine that same team is good enough to beat Bama for the second year in a row. The booze of choice here is going to be a New Orleans favorite. It's going to be a 180 octane. What that is, it's a frozen drink, which is lovely, added with a little 151. You can get it on Bourbon Street. The reason why is because Clemson, I get it. They're the national champs. First off, this drink is orange. But they're the national champs. You got to respect that. And they've technically been there before, but they're pretty relatively new to this whole winning thing and being on the national stage. So I expect them to go to New Orleans and handle it just like any dumbass tourist would be and just get super drunk off pure sugar and just fade out early with a brain freeze or just diabetes before the second half ends.
Fair enough. I was going to say, I thought the drink of choice would be the big-ass cup from Fat Tuesdays, full of frozen bullshit.
I think it has beer.
Yeah, full of frozen God knows what. So I appreciate you putting a little more effort into that one with the octane. Well, after you've sold us on the trilogy with the Sugar Bowl, my God, I mean, does UGA and Oklahoma even need to head out west at this point? I mean, we're getting our Super Bowl at that point. But let's quickly.
Where did you see the two punters in this game?
Well, okay, educate us. We got a
long snapper that'll just blow your socks off, man.
Is he blind like the guy in Southern California?
Tyler, you take that one.
Well, let's talk. We got UGA laying 1.5 versus Oklahoma.
Yeah, I'm actually probably the most excited for this game. Both these teams have been really good down the stretch. Some breaking news today. It sounds like Baker Mayfield might be under the weather with a possible flu, which, you know, first off, we got to get it on the table. Chris and I are huge Baker Mayfield fans. Huge.
Love Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, this guy is an absolute baller. He's been an absolute baller all year. He's been at his best down the stretch. Last 4 games, he's got 13 touchdowns versus 0 interceptions. He's definitely a dual threat guy, but he's more of he's not a designed run guy like Jalen Hurts is, but he's more of a scramble around and find a receiver downfield. He's absolutely devastating when a play breaks down. And Oklahoma's offense was pretty much number 1 in every category this year. I mean, they're averaging 8.44 yards per play, which is almost a full yard more than the second place team, which is UCF. They have the number 1 pass offense in the country. They have the number 1 rushing offense in the country. They've also been the most efficient offense and the most explosive. So, you know, it's not just Baker Mayfield, by the way. You know, they lost 2 NFL guys, in Joe Mixon and Samaje Perine, and they replaced them with Rodney Anderson, who, weirdly enough, got virtually no carries in their first 5 games. And then in the 8 games since, he's got 926 yards rushing and 15 total TDs. You look at Baker's receivers
hitting a woman.
Yes, accused but not convicted.
In typical Oklahoma running back fashion. So there's.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's on tape.
Yeah, exactly. But it won't be shown to the public. Then you look at Baker's favorite target, tight end Mark Andrews. Mackey Award winner. He had almost 950 yards receiving and 8 touchdowns, which in college for a tight end is ridiculous. And they've got 2 big play guys on the outside, and Marquise Brown and CeeDee Lamb. They're not big guys, but they're burners, and they construct the defense vertically, which is what Oklahoma wants because they run a lot of outside zone encounters. And their O-line allows that. Their O-line is ridiculously good, maybe the best in the country. Starts with Orlando Brown out there at tackle. He was an Outland Trophy finalist. He actually played his high school ball in Georgia, so he's familiar with a lot of guys on the Georgia defense. But outside of him, there's really no weak spot on the O-line that you're going to want to exploit. And on the flip side, you know, Georgia has one of the nation's best defenses. They're going to be, without a doubt, the most fast and the most physical defense that Oklahoma has played all year. It doesn't, you know, their D-line is pretty good, but it really starts with their linebacker core. You know, they got Lorenzo Carter, Davin Bellamy, and DeAndre Walker, who are all really dynamic players, but Roquan Smith there in the middle is an absolute animal at linebacker. He won the Buckets Award this year. He's led Georgia in tackling the last 2 years. He led them this year in sacks and quarterback hurries. And he is really going to be the kryptonite for that run game that OU loves. When you've got a linebacker that can run as fast as that guy, he's going to be very, very concerned about them getting on the outside edge there. Kirby Smart obviously comes from the Saban tree. So like I said before, you know, the defense likes to work from back to front, and their DBs play really well as a unit. No surprise there. Dominic Sanders and DeAndre Baker back there are absolute ball hawks. They love to pick the ball off, and it's gonna. I think the matchup there for Oklahoma is going to be getting the ball to Mark Andrews. I think Roquan Smith is going to be either spying Baker Mayfield or trying to neutralize that outside zone game. And so I think Mark Andrews there, the tight end, could have a big game. And then I think the biggest mismatch here, almost in all of the playoffs, is Georgia's offense versus Oklahoma's defense. Georgia loves to run the ball. They actually 70% of their offensive plays this year were runs. And Oklahoma's defense, while it got better as the year went on, they're pretty undersized. Their best player is probably their D end, which I'm probably going to fuck up his name here, but it's Obanaya Okoronkwo.
Good enough for me.
He's a really good D end, but he's 214 pounds. You don't get 214-pound D ends in the SEC. Emmanuel Beal at linebacker is another guy who's really good. He tackles in space, but he's also very undersized. And Georgia's got a three-headed monster at running back. They got Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, DeAndre Swift. Those guys combined ran for 2,700 yards and 29 touchdowns this year, and they averaged 7 yards per carry. I think if Georgia can establish the inside run game against Oklahoma, this game could actually get ugly. I think Georgia has shown that if they can get the inside run game going, they like to pound you inside, and they go to play action on first and second down, and that's where Jake Fromm, the true freshman quarterback, comes in. He's been, if anything this year, he's been very efficient. He's got 21 touchdowns versus 5 interceptions this year. He's gotten better along the way. In the last few games, they were rivalry games against Georgia Tech and Auburn, he had a really good game in each. For me, if I'm Oklahoma, typically you would think of Oklahoma as a spread tempo team. They typically run about 70 plays per game, but I think if I'm them, I try to rep tempo in practice leading up to this game and try to get Georgia on their heels a little bit, because I think if they play the regular game and slow it down a bit, they're not going to be able to out-physical or outrun that Georgia defense. And so, Georgia's used to playing very slow operating offenses in the SEC East. And so if they could go up tempo, I think that'd be huge to neutralize that linebacker unit. But, I dropped this little nugget in the last game, but ultimately in a game like this, I'm going to pick the better defense. And I don't love when a quarterback spends a lot of his time ahead of these big games going on the award circuit. And Baker Mayfield certainly was on the award circuit this year. I think Georgia is going to be able to run effectively against Oklahoma and try to keep Baker Mayfield off the field as much as possible. I think Roquan Smith is kind of the perfect linebacker to counter that outside zone run that Oklahoma loves to run. And I just think, on offense, I think UGA's O-line is going to be able to wear down that Oklahoma D-line and get those backs into the second level and control the clock. And so for me, UGA's got slightly better special teams as well. So I'm going to take Georgia to cover slightly 30-27. I think it'll be maybe lower scoring than we may thought.
I'm gonna not say anything about punters because I know we're pressed for time. But I will say this: there's no chance. There's just no chance in my mind that Georgia wins this game. I always make fun of Jalen Hurts for having the same game every game of the year. Jalen Hurts for Bama always seems to go like 11 of 18 for like 162 yards and like 1 touchdown and 1 interception. And Jake Fromm is even worse, in my opinion. I feel like Jake Fromm has gone they've basically hidden behind their run game for most of the year. And I know Oklahoma hasn't played a lot of teams and with a stellar defense or anything like that. And Oklahoma doesn't have a stellar defense themselves. I just don't see, you look at Kirby Smart, he has dominated defensively in the SEC over the past 10 years. As a defensive coordinator at Bama, now as a head coach, he's had a top 5 defense for literally a decade. When you step outside of the SEC and you look at the last 3 games he coached at Bama, at least, against teams outside with a spread offense outside of the SEC, it was Oklahoma in the 2014 or 2013 Sugar Bowl, Ohio State in the 2014 Sugar Bowl in the playoff, and Clemson in the 2015 National Championship game. He gave up over 500 yards of offense in every single one of those games. And I know he's not playing or anything like that, but as a coach, he gave up over 500 yards of offense to all 3 of those teams. I think this is a more dynamic offense than most of those teams had. Granted, there's no Zeke Elliott, there's no Deshaun Watson, but Baker Mayfield is pretty damn good. I think a freshman quarterback, I think Georgia's a year too early. I think they'll win the national championship or at least be in it next year because they'll be loaded. I just think they're a year early, and it's hard for a freshman quarterback to go on the road and do that. So I will take the senior quarterback and the best player in the country, Oklahoma, to win that. And I will also, for their beverage of choice, there's one thing we love about Oklahoma, and that's Toby Keith, y'all. Gotta love Toby Keith. I mean, what's not to love, man? His patriotism, that mullet he had in the early 90s.
I think I know where this is going.
Again, his patriotism. And you know what I learned out of one of his many shitty songs? I love this bar. He has his own franchise restaurant called Toby Keith's I Love This Bar and Grill. And it's not spelled with an E, so you know it's not fancy. The drink I was going to go with was the Oklahoma Breeze, because I honestly thought Oklahoma would breeze through this game. But now with Baker being sick, I'm going to go with the Indigo Kiss, which is, let me read as follows: Svedka Raspberry, Chambord, De Kuyper Peachtree Schnapps, Sour Mix, and Sprite. The reason I chose the Indigo Kiss is I don't know what the fuck that is. Most of the ingredients, I don't even know what that is. Also, I have no idea what Baker Mayfield's going to look like, him being sick, but I do think it will be a great outcome, much like this delicious drink that you could have at your very own Toby Keith's Bar and Grill. So I think Oklahoma wins. Going a step further, I think, I'm not sure if it's a fault of this, I think Oklahoma wins the national championship. I do think with Baker Mayfield, they have the best team in the country.
I gotta say, I when you said Toby Keith, I thought you were going whiskey for my friends and beer for my horses, but you went in a complete opposite freaking direction.
I'll do a 180 right now.
I'll turn this car around. Well, boys, I am going to have you back on. We're going to discuss the national championship after that these two games occur. So let's hold off on our predictions when talking about the playoff committee, and let's talk about where we can find you again. Remind the fans where we can find Winning and Boozing.
Yeah, so you can find us on iTunes. You can find us on Podbean. You can find us on Google Play as well. And then on social media, for Twitter and Instagram, we're at Winning and Boozing. That's winning the letter N, boozing. And we got a Facebook page as well, which is Winning and Boozing Podcast. Also, individually on Twitter, you can follow us. I'm at Tyler Huck, and Chris is at C. Mahler Comedian. And if anyone's coming in to Atlanta for the title game, let us know. We'd be glad to give you some recommendations as some local boys here.
Right on. There you go. You can find them at Twitter, Winning and Boozing. Yes. So yeah, I knew I was going to butcher that one. So
you can blame Chris for that confusing setup there.
There's too many letters. I didn't know what to do.
Well, gentlemen, Chris and Tyler, we thank you for coming aboard the Vegas Squares podcast. We'll definitely have you on next week. So we appreciate the time, and I guess who are we rooting for? Bama and Baker. I think I'm rooting for a Bama Baker showdown. So, gentlemen, we appreciate it.
You're goddamn right you are. Enjoy it.
All right, guys. We appreciate it.
All right, boys.
Yep.
A lot of information we got. Let's talk about some South football, and let's go into two teams that are near and dear to my heart, and we're going to bring in Ryan Bass to the program. If you're unfamiliar with Ryan's work, he is the CBS Tampa sports director, a proud UCF alum. And he and I worked together a few years back in Orlando. And Ryan, how's it going? Thanks for being part of the program.
Man, dating me now, right? With those way back dates, dude. That's awesome, man. It's good to chat with you again, guys. Thanks so much for having me on.
Right on. Ryan, well, let's jump right into it. Florida State has had a less than stellar season. Obviously, started with DeAndre's injury, but they finished nice. Beat Southern Miss 42-13 in the Independence Bowl. Blackman looked pretty decent. Over the course of the year, I'd say he looked pretty good. The question I have now is, obviously, with Jimbo gone, does Willie Taggart have a controversy on his hands heading into the 2018 season?
I mean, I'd say James Blackman looked more than decent, in the Independence Bowl. I think he had one of his best games of the year. Was named the Independence Bowl MVP. And, I think Willie Taggart has to sit back and evaluate what he has. And I think when you look at this team, obviously they underperformed this season, but I think the outlook for 2018 is pretty positive if you're Willie Taggart. You have one of the best running backs in the ACC in Cam Akers, who set the freshman record for rushing yards, beating out Dalvin Cook's record. And you got James Blackman and DeAndre Francois, two talented dual-threat quarterbacks who I think, you look at both of those guys, and if you're Willie Taggart, you're trying to find somebody who can play similarly to Quentin Flowers, because obviously Quentin enjoyed some of his best success, in Taggart's Gulf Coast offense. So, I think Taggart is certainly going to sit back and give both of these guys an opportunity to prove, they're deserving of the starting quarterback role. But to me, DeAndre Francois did nothing to lose that role. And you saw how the season was derailed, once he got injured in that season opener against Alabama. I mean, this was a team that was projected to be in the college football playoff and obviously vastly underperformed. And I think Francois' injury had a lot to do with that. So I believe Francois is the more talented player. I believe he will win out the quarterback competition. but certainly it would not behoove Willie Taggart to have an open competition and see which guy, is more deserving of the role next season.
Yeah, no doubt. It definitely sounds like if Blackman's unable to win that competition, then I think the red shirt's going to go right here, and that'd be a smart move if Taggart decides to go that route. Francois coming back, I mean, you just talked about, the talent that they have. I mean, pending National Signing Day, are they ready to get back to being competitive in the ACC? We saw Miami take a big step forward. Clemson, obviously, we know under Dabo is always going to reload. But does FSU have the talent and have the ability and have the coaching to get back into those upper echelon ranks in the Atlantic Coast Conference?
Yeah, I think they do. And I think Taggart, inherited a situation that he knew it wouldn't take him long to build a winning program again at Florida State. Look, this is a team last year that was really good in the last couple of years. Has been, the class of the ACC. And, it was really a weird year for Florida State. I mean, there were so many injuries, when it comes to the offensive line and at quarterback, and on defense. I mean, this is just a team that was depleted, injury-wise and just really had no chemistry, once DeAndre Francois went down with that injury. So, I think this team is ready to win once again. I think, Willie Taggart inherits a group that's talented, not just offensively, but also defensively. This obviously got a late start with signing day and, didn't have a full staff in place, for the early signing period. But, I think bringing back Odell Haggins was a massive, positive move for Willie Taggart as far as, the recruiting trail is concerned. I think they're going to, have a top 20 signing class when it's all said and done, the first Wednesday in February. I would not anticipate really this program taking a step back. 9-10 wins next year is certainly not out of the question. And I think Taggart really knows, look, there is a lot of talent, up and down this roster. And he's only going to add to it, with National Signing Day. So yeah, I don't anticipate this being a long rebuilding process, guys. I think Willie Taggart can come in here and potentially lead this team to, contention in the ACC next year and maybe within the next couple of years, the college football playoff national championship game, because, I think this program has that capability, under Willie Taggart. I got to know the guy at USF, man. I mean, there's just something about him. He's special. He's special when it comes to recruiting. He's special when it comes to, relating to players and being able to, instill and install his offenses. Willie's going to do a phenomenal job at Florida State. And I think it was a no-brainer hire for FSU, and they're definitely going to reap the benefits in the years to come.
That's good to hear. It's definitely a sense of optimism for Seminoles fans. Let's jump over to the undefeated Knights, and they're still playing football. In 2018, they'll be playing a game. We all know the Peach Bowl. Are you headed up to Atlanta for that one?
I am, morning of, and I'm hoping it doesn't snow because we know the Atlanta airport does not deal well with snow. So I got a 6:20, I believe, flight out of Tampa. So I'm hopeful that I will be there for that one. But yeah, guys, that's going to be it's going to be an awesome game between UCF and Auburn.
Yeah, most definitely. And UCF's in such a weird position here. I don't think I'm hard pressed to name another time this has happened where their coach who's leaving is still going to coach the bowl game, and their coach who's coming in is recruiting for next year. You're close with the team. How has this transition period been for the kids?
Well, look, everybody's going to tell you, on the surface that, everything's all fine and dandy, but it's certainly, guys, an awkward situation here. I mean, there's no doubt about it. You have, UCF's full coaching staff that's now over in Nebraska. They're recruiting for Nebraska after hours while trying to help this team, compete for, the Peach Bowl and hopefully, finishing the season undefeated. Look, I think you have to, it's a coaching staff that they are able to do this, that they're able to double dip. But you can't tell me that their full focus is on beating Auburn. It's just not possible when they're still trying to prepare for the future at Nebraska. So it has been an awkward transition. It's certainly not ideal when you have, Scott Frost working out of the same office, essentially. Frost was certainly not happy with the fact that, UCF staffers cleaned out his office, in preparation for Heupel, of course, for, early signing day and all that. So, it has certainly been an awkward situation. I hope that it has not affected the game plan with these players. They deserve the coach's, full attention. I believe they got that at least, throughout the process of practices and game prep. This team's going to be prepared. I mean, with the guys they have, the seniors they have on that roster, with Shaquem Griffin and Traquan Smith, who should leave early to the NFL draft. They got a lot of veteran presence on that roster that is certainly not going to let them, just mail it in this game essentially and use the coaching changes as an excuse. He's going to put that behind them, and they're going to play a competitive game on New Year's Day against Auburn.
So, all right, well, let's look at one of the veterans, and he's been definitely a viral sensation. What do we have up? What does Mac Loudermilk have up his sleeve planned for the Peach Bowl?
I don't know. He's got the golf swing going down. I mean, he's been certainly entertaining to watch, guys. Because look, we've had some entertaining punters in UCF's past, but it's usually been the focus when the team's gone winless, not when they're undefeated. So. Mac Loudermilk is certainly a character in his own right, and look, man, it's always entertaining when he lines up. He hasn't punted much this year, so when he does, it's certainly noteworthy. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, he's got the golf club, and the swing, on point. So we'll see what he's got in store for the Peach Bowl.
Yeah, and you're close to a lot of these players, like you talked about Shaquem Griffin and Loudermilk, et cetera. But there's a couple of guys on this team, about half dozen or so, that were on both the Fiesta Bowl and this current Peach Bowl roster. What's the feeling for the players along those lines, the success that they've had in their 5 years in Orlando?
Yeah, it's just a few of them. But, look, I think that they're trying to draw on that experience. And it's been a rocky road, guys. I mean, it's very rare you go from, beating, a Big 12 champion in a BCS Bowl and being the youngest program by 30 years to win a BCS Bowl to going winless just a few years later to then returning to that very same place. I mean, it is a huge testament to just how recruiting rich, Orlando is, how good of a job Scott Frost and his staff has done, and really the talent that was left behind. I mean, George O'Leary, sure, they went winless that year, but it was an avalanche, guys. I mean, everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong. And once the losses piled up, it's hard to turn that thing around. So the cupboard wasn't bare when Scott Frost took over. There was some talent here. So, I think some of those guys are going to draw on that experience. But look, it's an entirely new group, and it's a young group, led by guys like Mackenzie Milton, who's a sophomore, and Otis Anderson and Adrian Killens, who are both, underclassmen, and Gabe Davis, who's a freshman, and Judge Snelson. I mean, you got so many guys here that are young, that are producing for this team, offensively and defensively. I mean, Mike Hughes is a transfer that hasn't been here very long,
Right.
So, this is certainly a unique situation. But I think, those seniors and the guys that have been here throughout, this entire process certainly know what it's like to be the underdog against, a big time Power 5 program. And I think they're relating to the guys that look, everybody's counting you out, but let's go out there and prove them wrong like we did a couple of years ago. Yeah,
no doubt. Definitely the leaning on the underclassmen has been, what Scott Frost has been able to do to make this team so successful. We talk about the 17 team and we talk about the 13 team. Let's line them up. I mean, who wins that game?
I love my guys. I love Scott Frost. I love Blake Bortles, certainly. I was really close with that 2013 team. I think George O'Leary did a phenomenal job that year, and Storm Johnson. I mean, the list goes on and on. But I'd have to say this year's team wins, man. I just don't think that. And now that team was phenomenal offensively as well. I mean, they were putting up well over 35 points per game under OC Charlie Taft. I mean, they did a phenomenal job. I mean, they put 52 on Baylor, which of course the Big 12 defense, but still they put 52 on them. So
right.
I think this 2017 team would win, though, guys. The speed that they have, the Scott Frost, playbook. The no huddle, no mercy offense. I mean, that would just be really tough for that defense back in 2013 to keep up with. Although I do think Terrence Plummer and the guys could certainly handle it. It would be fun to watch, though. I would love to see those two teams matched up against each other. But I would certainly give the edge to this group. The athletes, I mean, it's just they're supreme as far as this year's talent. Because not to knock the 2013 team, because they had a lot of good athletes as well, but especially from down in Miami. But this group of guys is really special.
Yeah, most definitely. That'd be a neat trick to watch those two go at it. Well, let's turn the page on Scott Frost, because after the first, he's going to be gone. And you talked about Josh Heupel, the brand new coach at UCF. Obviously, his ties are to Missouri, and obviously he won a national title at Oklahoma as a quarterback. So when Coach Heupel came down the wire as the new UCF head coach, what was your immediate reaction?
shock. I mean, but it's certainly no surprise. I mean, that is Danny White's MO, the athletic director at UCF. He certainly makes, unconventional hires. Scott Frost was certainly one that came out of left field, and that worked out well. So, look, I want to put faith in Danny White and hope that, he has found a hidden gem, if you will, in Josh Heupel. But I want to caution this, guys, because I think a lot of people are going to hold Josh Heupel up to Scott Frost standards, and that's just entirely unfair. You can't expect Heupel to come in here and just replicate what Scott Frost was able to do. It's so uncommon what Frost and company were able to do in their 2 years, just 2 short years in Orlando, and they took this program from winless to one of the top 15 programs, should be top 10 programs in the country. So I think Heupel will do a fine job. His offenses were certainly good at Missouri. He turned them around from one of the worst in college football to number 7 in the country. They've been top 10 the last couple of years. I think his system will work well in Orlando. But Frost and the bravado that his staff had is hard to replicate, guys. I mean, it is really hard to replicate. How close that staff was, how solid they were on the recruiting trail. And, look, when Scott Frost walks in a living room, you just get this sense of confidence that not that Josh Heupel doesn't have, but it's just something that I haven't sensed with Heupel that you sense with Frost. So, I certainly hope there's no drop off, but it'll be interesting to see if Heupel can continue the success that Frost and company have started here in Orlando.
Well, yes, I agree with that. I mean, I'm excited about Heupel. My initial reaction was, I knew the name from, back in the day, but I didn't even know he was in the coaching ranks. So I'm definitely optimistic, and I'm excited. And, Ryan, we appreciate you coming on, taking the time out of your busy schedule, and we'll see you.
Guys.
We'll see you in Atlanta.
Yeah, anytime you guys need me on, man, I appreciate it. And, big fan of your work, guys. I appreciate you having me on the podcast. This is awesome. So.
Thanks, Ryan. We appreciate the kind words, brother.
All right, guys. Have a good one. See ya.
So that's going to do it for this edition of the Vegas Squares podcast. We appreciate you listening, and we'll see you next time.